Welcome to a chef's grimoire, Winter. Today we'll be learning about the Fool.
Welcome to the kitchen. This is where all the magic is going to happen. Now, I do need to make a disclaimer. I'm a chef. That's what I do. My way of doing things in the kitchen may not be how all chefs' ways of doing things in the kitchen are, but that's not a bad thing. It's just different. And the same goes with tarot. I've practiced tarot for many years, have listened to many teachers over the years, have resonated with some, not with others. So if you watch this series and find that my teachings are not in the same line of the way that you practice tarot, move on. But if you find value in this series, which is going to go from the beginning to the end of the deck, then stay with us and give us your comments. If I don't say something that resonates with you, leave it. If I do, use it. Here we are. This is the Chef's Grimoire, the actual book. So I'm going to start our lesson with the Major Arcana. And the Major Arcana, the way I've broken it down, is in 3 lines. And what are the majors? Well, there's majors and minors because there is 78 cards in the tarot deck. This is only 22 of them. I wanted to start with the majors because I feel each card will represent a very specific thing or technique that we can use in the kitchen. And by the end of this, you'll know how to prepare almost any meal. So this is the perfect place to start. In tarot, these are major influences, major situations in life. And we'll get into each one as we go. Now, there was a tarot personality back in the 1990s, who brought tarot from being an occult, black art into more of our living rooms, into our daily practices. Her name was Rachel Pollack, and she took the tarot and broke it into these 3 specific lines. And what are these lines? Well, the first one is consciousness. The second line is subconsciousness. And the third line is superconsciousness. And what does that mean to me? Well, I feel like the first line is our learning. We're going to bump into things like, say, I don't know, child to high school to marriage to children to basically right to there. So I call this the maid stage. This line is more midlife things that you will run into when you've learned your textbook studies, you picked up a few gold nuggets along the way from different teachers, and now you're pretty much off on your own. I call this the maiden stage. And then this stage is later in life. This is, or later in your situation. I say later in life because you can relate to that, but it could be like cooking a meal. You have a beginning, middle, and an end. So beginning, middle, and end. This is the crone stage, the way I think of it. This is all the things that happen when you've taken all of this into consideration and now you're working through it. Why is the Fool over here? Well, the Fool is actually us. These are our situations, but this is us in these situations. That's why the Fool is here. The Fool is numbered 0. 0 is often thought of as source. It's actually not a number, where these are all numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. 0 is technically not a number. It's source, it's the beginning, it's, some people think of it as God. There's many ways to interpret the 0, but that's the quote-unquote number of the Fool. Now this is the Robin Wood Tarot deck, and I'm going to show you this card simply because these are my favorites. I've had these forever and they're dirty and loved. But I wanted to show you up close the Fool card rather than the little snippets in the book. So we're going to talk about the symbolism in the card. First off, we've got the Fool. The Fool is absolutely carefree, not looking where they're going, about to walk off this cliff. If you can see, it's a cliff. What happens after that? We don't know. The little dog here is a wonderful companion to the Fool. This dog, to me, represents the subconscious or higher self. And it's warning the Fool, hey, you're gonna walk off a cliff there, dude, so be careful. The Fool pays no mind to him. So this is where we have to, basically when we turn this card in a deck, we have to see what card is here and what card is here to really get a full understanding of what this guy is doing. So anyway, other symbolisms in the card. We've got butterflies. Butterflies always mean transformation. Transformation in the Fool is that this Fool is actually moving from one thing to another. So playing a Fool by starting over, by transforming themselves. And that could mean anything. That could mean moving house. It could mean having a baby. It could mean changing careers. In our world, it could mean starting a new recipe, working with a new kitchen tool. That's all things that you play the Fool. You're starting new. As we talked about, the Fool is numbered 0. And there's colors here in the card. He's got rainbow colors on his backpack, which we'll discuss in a second. But you've got earth, which is always usually depicted as green. And you've got water, which is always depicted as blue. Now, water in the sky, what's up with that? Well, it's just showing that it's a clear sky. There's no clouds, there's no sun. It's just a clear blue sky. Perfect slate for starting new. The white of the mountains is purity. And oftentimes, especially in the Rider-Waite deck, which is the cards I chose to put in the Grimoire, the Fool is usually carrying a white rose. And a white rose means purity. So again, going back to innocence, purity, starting new. These are all catchphrases for this card. Now, getting back to the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, you'll see the Fool has the little dog. He's actually holding the rose. And you've got blue here, which is water. He's still gonna take a tumble off that cliff. But in the background here, it's yellow. Why? Because this card is actually, the element that rules it is air. And air is always yellow in the cards, at least to my knowledge. The sun is shining, clear sky, perfect day to start something new. Now, what we haven't discussed is this backpack. The backpack or the hobo bag, however it's depicted, what the Fool carries with them on their journey. So now we're going to move on to the Fool page. The Fool page is literally all that I know about the Fool and my concept about this card. There's a little story attached, so I'm going to take a sip of my tea. And I'll read you the story. The day is bright and clear. Awakened to birds singing in the sky, the Fool decides to venture away from comfortable surroundings to embark on a new journey. It's said that every time we start something new, we play the Fool. Whether it be a new job, a new hobby like cooking, or even just starting a new recipe, we envision only the best outcome and put our foot forward with unlimited potential. Although carefree and jovial, even the fool knows that nourishment is necessary for any journey. They took time to pack their bag, which is carried over their shoulder. But what do we think is inside? Well, many say, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, who had the power to go home any time, the fool also carries all the tools needed in this bag, which will be of aid in times of need. Inside, there is the power of the 4 elements: earth, fire, water, air. And although it's not until the fool meets the magician that we learn how to use these elements, novice with the elements, the fool can still manipulate their energy to stir up some delicious treats while on the go. And together we can explore the foods that pair well with the energy of each element and build menus to keep our bellies from growling as we take the next plunge into whatever comes next. That's my story. So I depicted the white rose, which again means innocence. And in this very simple depiction of the fool, he's also carrying that beautiful white rose. The elements are something that we'll learn more with the magician, but I truly believe that this is what the fool has in his pack. And the fool doesn't know what he has in his pack. I mean, it's like you're going on a camping trip and you just throw things into a bag and you get there and you're like, did I bring that? Did I bring that? Do I need that? You just do it haphazardly. And that's exactly what the fool did in packing for the trip he's on. And it's not until he meets the magician that he really understands and starts to utilize the meanings of these elements. So what are the elements? That's this page. The elements are basically, I'll read you the little graph here. So you've found the keys to unlock the mystery of the cards. The elements describe the core function and personality of anything, be it person, situation, or meal. And I highly resonate with this. Well, you've got earth, air, fire, and water. And people actually, if you look into astrology and all of that, hold the signs of the 4 elements as well. So you can categorize people by just what their astrological signs are. In this case, it's just tarot, so I'm not going to get into the whole astrology thing, but that's that. Now, again, I was talking about colors, so we've got green as the earth color. So anytime you see green depicted in a card, it means there's earth involved. And what is earth? Well, for the tarot, it means nurturing, it means grounding, it means materialistic things, usually depicted by a pentacle. And what is a pentacle? Well, it's not some scary dark art thing. It's actually, if you look at Michelangelo's depiction of a human, and they've got their arms outstretched, their legs here, and their head. That's exactly what a pentacle is. It's got a top, 2 sides, and 2 bottoms. And it means the mind, the spirit, all of the things that we put together to have a thing. Therefore, that's why it means materialistic, because it takes ether and turns it into something. So in life, your tarot cards will represent things like work and money and what else I can think right now, but those kinds of things. Now, when we get to culinary, the earth element in different cultures for culinary means sweet and starchy tastes that are grounding, nourishing, and hearty. See the resemblance? Nourishing, hearty, grounding, culinary. So we could take into consideration things like grains. Grains are, very satiating and they keep you filled for a long time. root vegetables from the earth, meat, usually red meat, but I'm going to say any meat. Things that fill you up, keep you satiated, keep you nourished. Eggs, dark leafy greens, nuts, cow dairy, coconut, honey, maple syrup, molasses. These are all just top of my head things that would resemble things that you can make really hearty, deep, and delicious meals with. I also put the butterfly here. Again, butterflies are all about transformation. I have some birds up here, birds singing in the sky, hanging almost like a paper moon type vignette of hanging stars. So is it real or is it not? We've got the fool's gold going around as the border. I'm just taking a break from the elements to show you other things in here. And then we've got my jester boots, which I fell in love with this picture, so I decided to put it in. And the sun shining, because it's a beautiful day to start a new thing. So getting back to the elements. We move on to fire. Fire, the color is usually red or yellow, depending on the deck, but yellow is more air. We'll get to that in a minute. Red is usually fire. In tarot, fire, the element, usually means action, inspiration, and creativity. So all of those things you can read in the cards that are of fire. And the symbol I've chosen to choose for fire is a candle, but many times fire is depicted as staves or staffs or rods, things that conduct what would be fire. So, fire. When we get to culinary, we've got spicy, bitter, foods with red color. That's a given, but spicy and bitter. Spicy because fire is heat. Bitter, fire, once it's burned, can be bitter. So those are things that we will use into consideration when building meals that are with the element of fire. We've got things like lettuce. Yes, lettuce. Tomatoes, they're red in color, but they're also a bit, bitter if they're not, if they're not in season, let's say. Lamb, barbecued meats, goat and sheep dairy, wine, beer, coffee, tea, dark chocolate, chilies, and hot peppers. Fire. Moving on to air. Air is usually, as we said, depicted with yellow in the background or some kind of yellow illustration. In the tarot, it's thoughts, clarity of mind, and ideas. Air is, I've depicted it with a feather because I believe a feather is the old way of taking thoughts and putting them on paper. You used a quill, and that's why I love the feather for a symbol for air, but in many, many decks, it's depicted as a sword. A sword is sharp, it cuts through any emotion, and it gets right to the specific matter at hand. So you'll see swords, you'll see feathers, you'll see different things, but if the card has quite a bit of yellow in it, it's usually depicting that is the air element brought in. Now in culinary, it's more pungent, astringent foods. So you've got your aromatics, your garlic, your onions, mustards, ginger, things like that can all be incorporated into air meals, which is really nice. Then we move on to water. Now water, the chalice or the cup, is a true depiction of how it's done in the cards most times. Water's color is blue, and in tarot it means emotions, relationships, and your intuition. So water heavy cards, like in the Major Arcana, it's going to be, say, the moon. The moon is ruled by going back to astrology, Cancer, and Cancer's ruler is the moon. And the moon brings in that beautiful moonlight that you don't really see as clearly as, say, the sun card. So there's a lot of flow in the way that you're going to go through the moon card, or the situation with the moon coming up as the card. For the culinary aspect, where we have salty and fluid foods, again, the fluidity of the card. So seafood, fermented foods, miso. There's a bunch more, which we'll get into when we start to work with the water element. These are the true elements that I believe go into the Fool's pack.
In addition to the 4 elements the Fool has in his pack, let's add a good set of culinary tools. Step 1 of tarot and culinary fusion: knife skills. The list of tools a chef uses can be daunting, so let's start at the beginning with what knives are best to use and how to care for them. This is a serrated bread knife. A serrated knife can be used for breads, cakes, and anything that needs to retain loft. This one's long, but you can get them in all lengths. These are cutting shears from Zwilling. I use these for removing backbones from chickens, in addition to other things. Now this set has a nutcracker, a bottle opener, and a handy dandy jar opener. An excellent vegetable peeler is crucial. I've had this one from Rada for years. It works. Period. A good prep knife is also necessary. This is a Global 7-inch. Great for smaller jobs. Completely forged from one piece of steel with a non-slip handle. It's a must in the chef's kit. This Rada paring knife is another knife I've had for years and I love it. Lightweight and perfect for detail work. At last, the creme de la creme, my chef's knife. This is an Asian Mac knife with a ton of use. It has the tang running all the way through the handle, with rivets just for show. The divots on the knife make food less likely to stick. A good chef's knife is like a favorite pair of jeans. It has to feel good in your hand. So when you shop for one physically, go to the store and try it before you buy. Now, how to keep your knives sharp. This is a honer. It's meant to bring back the edge of your knives, not to sharpen them. But we'll get to the difference in a bit. Next up, a sharpener. This one uses water to ease the friction of the pulling. It's from Global, and I got it when I got this little prep knife. Now the difference between honing and sharpening is when you run your knife through your sharpening tools, whether it be the one I have or a sharpening stone, you're taking off a little of the metal on the knife every time. So best to only do it when absolutely necessary. Now I'm going to run this through the white first, and then I'm going to finish on the pink. They're all done. Now you should know you're going to run it through as many times as necessary to get it sharp. Honing. It's a great asset to your knife. The more you hone, the better your sharp edge will be without needing a sharpen. So basically you're taking the food off of the knife. Now I know you're cleaning your knives, but this is actually going to scrape those minuscule pieces of food that you can't see off your knife so your edge comes back. Now, it depends on the angle of your knife as to how you're going to hone, but I usually do like a 18 to 20 degree angle. And I run it through, again, maybe 5-6 times per side. How you hold your knife while working matters. You will use your dominant hand to pinch the blade that meets the handle. Holding the knife by the handle does not give you control you need. So instead, pinch and curl the 3 fingers left around the handle. Now you're in control. Some people like to extend their finger along the blade, but best to pinch and curl for best handling. Now this is a French chef's knife, so it's meant for rocking. You will slide the blade forward and then trail back with the tip left on the board. Forward, trail, forward, trail. Now let's put what we've learned to use. We'll start with the onion. There's a stalk end and a root end. Pinch, curl, and chop off the stalk end. You can toss your scraps into your compost bucket. Now you have a flat surface. Lay the flat surface against your board and pinch the onion by the root. Your knife is going to go under your fingers. This way is more dangerous as the knife could slip and cut you. So pinch for support, then slice down through the root. Now you have 2 halves with a root end attached to both halves. That's important. Root end, stalk end. Pinch, curl. Now start by cutting into the onion at the stalk end, but don't go all the way through. Instead, make a little flower petal which is still attached. You're going to continue this cutting from the root to the stalk. Insert the tip of your knife and slice through. The more cuts you do, the smaller the dice chop. The root end should always keep the onion together, acting like a third hand. If a few pieces come apart, no worries. You just need to be more cautious when you're chopping. Now the other hand you are not holding the knife with is called your guiding hand. This knife will touch your knuckles as it glides through. Usually it's your bad finger that's in charge. Pinch, curl, and slice forward, trailing back. As the knife trails back, your guiding hand also moves back. And ideally, you're making as many slices as you did from the root end to the stalk end across your cuts. Soon you're going to run out of real estate. So tip the root end to the ceiling and continue slicing. Flip the root back to the original position and slice some more until you have a tiny little nub for compost. You're not going to get perfection here, but you're going for even Steven, so everything should be uniform and the same size. That's a chop and or a dice. Let's move on to a Julienne cut. I like to trim the top and the bottom off the carrot before I peel them. This is elective, but I just find that it's easier. Now scrape the onion with your peeler until all the skins are off. Did I mention a bench scraper? Oh yeah, this is an awesome tool. Saves your knife from dulling. So I don't like to use anything that's larger than my knife. I usually cut it in half. Now I have more control over the vegetable. Remember to cut through most anything. Always pinch for support, and you have the blade go through under your pinch. I'm going to insert the knife into the carrot, and then I'm going to push down at the tip and follow with the handle. I'm going to continue to do this same type of cut, inserting, pushing, and following until I have a few planks. And you'll do this as many times as necessary for the size of the carrot. Now I'm going to cut these planks into batons, which is like a French fry cut, just a fancy French word. Again, you're not going for perfection, you're just going to get them even Steven. Next, we're going to take all or part of the pile, depending, and you're going to cross-cut your batons. This is called a Brunoise. A Brunoise cut are the tiny little cubes, so if you did your Julienne and or baton correctly, your little Brunoise will be perfect squares. I never get perfect squares, but you see what I'm doing. Now we're going to work with celery. So I'm going to trim off the root end. And these particular celery have their leaves attached, so we're going to trim them out. Making sure that they're not dirty. You're going to rinse all your vegetables before you start chopping them. Now all these little lovely leaves I'm going to put into my bone broth Ziploc bag that I keep in my freezer. Now this is going to be an interesting cut because it's as long as my knife, but I'm going to use it regardless. I'm going to cut down and through, and I know my hands are against the blade, but this is such a soft vegetable that it's easier to do it this way rather than a pinch. You want all of the stalks to be about the same size. Now we're going to either take the whole stack or part of the stack, line them up like little soldiers, and cross-cut them. Pinch, curl, slice forward, trail back, meet that knuckle. Slice forward, trail back, meet that knuckle. Beautiful. So congratulations. We made mirepoix. Mirepoix is that carrot, celery, onion combination that's great in soups, stews, sauces, you name it. Absolutely beautiful. Excellent job.
Excellent job. We learned about the fool today. We learned about the elements, and we covered knife skills. Oh my gosh, that's enormous. So we're off to a good start. Next week, we'll be working on recipes, using everything that we learned. So practice in the next week, and I'll see you next Friday. Thanks, guys.